Lisa, did you want to say something, or should I just get started?
I'll just say welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to the panel. I hope you're having a wonderful time at the fair today, and definitely look into rural counties. I'll turn it over to David.
Okay, thank you all for joining, and we have three panelists here who are public defenders in three rural counties, primarily rural counties in New York State. And my name is David Shope. I'm the executive director of the Legal Aid Bureau in Buffalo. And you know, something I would say about rural counties is, although Buffalo is a relatively large city, it's the second largest city in the state of New York. Erie County, however, the county in which we practice, has a lot of rural sections. So by no means are these three public defenders from three different counties representing the extent of rural practice in New York. There are 64 counties in New York, and essentially about 45 of them are primarily rural. And these are in this period great potential hiring opportunities, since since New York State is going through a process of indigent defense reform, essentially, with new money that is coming into various counties for positions, even during this period of downturn economy, etc. Some counties are hiring. So we thought we'd put together a panel talking about what it's like to practice in rural New York. And the three folks that we have speaking are Barbara Kelly, who is a long-term public defender. And when I say public defender, I mean the head of the office public defender for Allegany County. And she will talk about practicing there. Then we have Zachary Wentworth, who is relatively new in his position, from I know the name of the county, and it's not sticking in my mind right now.
Chenango.
Chenango. I was going to say Casadega, Chenango. Chenango is in a beautiful section of New York, near Cooperstown, and sort of near the Finger Lakes. And then Jamie Martineau, who is up in northern New York, Adirondack area, also another gorgeous area of New York State. So I'm going to turn it over to them. Each of them are going to talk for about 5 minutes about their work, and then we'll open it up for questions. Barbara, did you want to start?
Sure, thank you. Thanks for having me. As David said, I'm the public defender in Allegany County. I have been in the public defender's office for almost 30 years. I've been the chief public defender for the last 15. When I first started there, I was the third part-time attorney to come on. It was two previously. So, we've expanded greatly, much to, because of the Harrell Herring monies and the ILS, and I've been able to successfully expand our office. Right now we have 5 full-time attorneys, 2 secretaries, and a case assistant. In Allegany County, we not only do criminal defense, we also do family court. So that would mean, we do neglect, abuse, termination of parental rights, custody and visitation, and family offenses, in addition to criminal. The criminal cases, we are extremely rural. There is not a city at all in Allegany County, so it's all our courts are justice courts, town and village courts. And if you come to practice in a rural area like ours, you will, I know my urban friends are often surprised that the justices in the town and village courts are not required to be attorneys. So you're dealing with teachers, and we have a veterinarian, truck drivers, all kinds of unemployed people who, just happen to win election. Out of our 35 courts, only 2 have attorney judges. Our caseload is fairly heavy. The types of cases we have are very much, a factor of where we live. We don't, excuse me, we don't get a lot of homicides. We don't have a gang issue or anything like that. We're very rural, as I said, but the serious cases we do handle, I would say, the greatest number of them are serious drug cases and sex offenses. Right now, we do have like 4 homicide cases, which is kind of unusual for us. Like I said, we don't get a lot of that, but one of the perks, I think, one of the advantages of coming to work in a rural county is that you would get access to and be working on more serious cases sooner. We don't have the luxury of just, having people work in the justice courts and only handle misdemeanors for a couple of years. You come right in and get your feet wet. So, a couple of the homicide cases we have, while we don't get a lot of them, they're really interesting. I made this point earlier when we were planning this session, and 2 of our cases are extremely interesting right now. One of them, there's a teenage boy who's accused of killing his parents and hanging out in his house with their bodies for a couple of weeks. And and he may or may not have, it may have been his father was extremely abusive and killed the mother, and maybe he killed dad in self-defense. But the point I want to make is that our associate who's been here 2 years is second chairing on that case. So he's getting a lot of good experience and a lot of good work where that's going. Another feature I think of our cases, it's just because we're so small. I mean, the population of our county is less than 50,000. Everybody knows everybody. So an identification case would be really rare. If somebody's assaulted, they usually know who they're accusing of assaulting them, or if it's a sex offense, it's way more common that it's somebody that they know and can name. As I said, I've been here a very long time, and that has good and bad features. I have represented in many cases 3 generations in the same family. I've had 3 generations of sex offenders in one family, so it is what it is. But working in a rural county, you're going to know everybody. We only have 2 county judges. The DAs, there are 5 of them. So you get to know them well and their positions. The downsides, I guess, we're pretty isolated, although 2 things about that. We're close to Buffalo and Rochester, so if you want to go to a play or a concert or some sort of event, it's not that far away. The other thing I would say is that I think the pandemic has been sort of the great equalizer in that, we're all home doing things online. And lastly, I guess the last thing I'd say is the culture here is really conservative. I am not, and if you are not of that political cultural persuasion, you're going to find yourself in the minority, and you have to be comfortable with that. I had the experience of trying to talk to my county legislature, who oversees our office, about all the wonderful benefits of bail reform, and they were not receptive to the idea. Some of them were downright rude and mean, but you take it. So I guess that's about it for me.
You want me to go next, Zach?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So as you can see on the screen, I'm Jamie Martineau. I'm the public defender here in Clinton County, which is basically the most northern eastern part of New York State that you can be in. We're kind of in a triangle, so I can look out my office window at Lake Champlain and the state of Vermont and the Green Mountains, or I can get in my car, drive 60 minutes north and be in Montreal. So we're rural county, not a huge population, pretty big geographically, so we cover a large area. It's very diverse. We do have a city, which is the city of Plattsburgh, and the population there fluctuates as we do. It's basically a city built around a SUNY college. We have a lot of New York State correctional facilities, both in the county and in the surrounding counties. So a lot of the middle class people here work at that facility, or the other main employer is the hospital, which is like the biggest hospital in this area of New York. So that's for the most part the population we have. Just like Barbara said, if you opened up the paper tomorrow and saw that there was a homicide in the county, you would be shocked, because it just doesn't happen that often. We did have a streak for a little bit where it was, I don't know what happened. I actually have the privilege of saying I'm one of the few local attorneys that has tried a homicide case. Don't diss me, but I was a prosecutor at the time. I actually left the adjoining county's DA's office to take this job here in Clinton County, which is where I've been, I was born and raised. But I picked up a majority of my trial experience and my criminal law experience as a prosecutor for a fair number of years, which, people say, well, why'd you switch? I kind of switched as bail reform was happening, because this office is brand new. We've only been in existence we're coming up on 2 years now. I actually started the first day of January in 2019, and I had white walls and an empty office space. I did everything from furnishing to decorating to staffing. I now have 6 full-time assistant PDs, one of them being my chief. 2 of those APDs I actually stole from the DA's office that I left, so I'm not allowed back in that county for a while. I have 4 staff members, and I also have a retired New York State Police investigator who's on staff as our investigator here, because we are very busy. I think like a lot of the rural areas in New York, we handle a lot of serious, B felony, A felony level drug cases. We get a lot of cases out of the prisons for promoting prison contraband and assaults and whatnot. And then a lot of our crimes from there are, alcohol, substance abuse related, the domestic violence, the driving while impaired. We get a lot of those. And I would say out of, all the cases we have criminally in the county, from town court all the way to county court, this office probably handles 90% of those, because people just can't afford to retain their own attorneys. So most people will qualify for our services. And, so it keeps us busy. We have, being in New York, just like Barbara too, our town judges are not attorneys. Unfortunately for us, a large number of ours are retired state troopers and retired correction officers. And you might as well put a suit on them and call them the prosecutor on a lot of occasions. So that it makes it a difficult hurdle to overcome. And everybody knows everybody, so we have that issue as well. I'll end it by saying this, because I don't want to just reiterate everything Barbara said. The luckiest thing that happened to me is the start date for us taking in cases was April 1st of 2019. At the time, it was just myself, my confidential secretary, and my chief assistant, PD. And so I left my home, which is about 40 minutes from the office. I live in a very country setting, because you don't have to live in Plattsburgh. There's some nice, beautiful, my biggest neighbor is deer in my backyard in the morning. I got halfway to work when I got a phone call saying that essentially a murder had just occurred like 5 miles from my house. It was a domestic that had gone sideways. And the guy ended up shooting his girlfriend as she was driving by in a pickup truck. And I was like, I cannot believe this. The first case I'm going to get opening the doors is a homicide. And I don't mean this to, to belittle the situation, but then the second call I got was from my brother saying, you'll never believe this. This guy just shot his girlfriend right out in front of the house. I witnessed the whole damn thing. And I was like, oh, phew, thank God. He's the star witness for the people. So obviously we couldn't take the case. So we lucked out and allowed us to kind of get our feet under us before we had to jump right into that. So, you know, that, with that being said, though, I wouldn't change it. I lived here my whole life. I went away for college, worked for the federal government for a bit in Maryland, and couldn't wait to get back here and settle down and, you know, plant my roots and have my kids and let them grow up in the same environment I did. So I wouldn't change it for anything. And then I'll turn it over to Zach.
Great. So Chenango County, we're just north of Binghamton. We're the county right above Broome County. Again, very rural. We have one city court in the city of Norwich. If you call it a city, I think there's less than 7,000 people here. So it's pretty small. We have like 25 town and village courts, the same thing. I think we have one attorney, judge. The rest are all either bus drivers or retired law enforcement for the most part. And you know, to reiterate some of the same things, you're going to deal with serious cases very early on in your career in a rural law office like this. I started out doing the family court work. Our office is set up that we have now 4 full-time attorneys. One of them does exclusively family court. The other 3 of us do criminal work. So I started out as the family court attorney full-time in 2014, became the first assistant, and now I'm the public defender. And my first felony jury trial was sitting second chair on a first-degree murder case. I mean, that's the kind of experience you'll get in a rural law office is when we get a serious case like that, a homicide or a very serious assault, it really becomes all hands on deck. We need the whole staff to kind of help with that. We only have, like I said, 4 attorneys. At that time, we only had 3. We had 3 full-time staff now. At that time, we had 2 full-time staff and a part-time staff. We don't have our own investigator, so if we need an investigator on a case, we have to go out and retain the services of one. We don't have any social workers on staff, anything like that. So as the attorney, there's a lot of times on smaller cases where you're doing a good chunk of that investigative work on your own, tracking down witnesses, trying to get information for your clients. But really, you're going to be dealing with the serious cases pretty early on, and you're going to have a really a busy caseload. The 3 full-time attorneys doing criminal work, we cover 25 town and village courts, a city court, and county court here, as well as family court. So you have 3 of us covering all of those courts. Most of them meet twice a month now. And so we're going out to those. And the other piece is maybe one of the downsides, if you want to look at it that way, but sometimes not, a lot of those town courts here still meet at night. We have a lot of town courts that start at 5 or 6 or 6:30 p.m. So you drive out to these courts pretty late at night. But going back to, I think Jamie used the number, they represent probably 90% of the caseload in the county. We're probably in that same range between 80 and 90. When you show up to town court, to some extent, you're kind of a rock star. Everybody's there to see you. You know, everybody's in line waiting to talk to you about their case because you're their attorney, or, you know, you're going to be the person standing up with them. And so you really do get a lot of experience very quickly on a wide range of cases working in these small offices. And that's really, it's a big advantage because you learn to not just, you know, as funny as it sounds, you're not just a lawyer to a lot of these people. You're their attorney, and to some extent, part-time counselor, and you know, trying to go through what family issues or what social issues are affecting why they've done what they've done, and trying to help counsel them through that as well. So you really, the clients rely on you. You know, for whatever reason, our office is a catch-all. Every time anybody has a legal question, they're told to come here, even if it's something we don't handle. So we end up referring them out to like rural legal services or legal aid. But anytime, I think one of the coolest things for me when I was a young attorney in the public defender's office, younger attorney in the public defender's office, was when just to give an example, most of the private attorneys in our area are general practitioners. They do everything: criminal law, family law, divorces. To have one of those attorneys call me and ask me, you know, what do I know on a topic or on the law, a criminal law issue, or, you know, do I have something I might be able to share with them on a particular topic, is kind of a neat thing when you're a young attorney to have an older attorney calling you to ask that. It's kind of exciting. So you really get an opportunity to do a lot of different things. Our office, if there's a particular case, my two assistants that are handling town court do all the preliminary felony work. If there's a preliminary hearing, we'll sit down and go over that. And then the other nice part is we can sit down as an office and discuss our cases. If there's an issue or issues, it literally is walk into the next room and have the three of us sitting down and going over, you know, issues and, you know, getting different opinions on how to deal with those issues so that maybe we come out with the best possible course for what we're doing. So you really do have the opportunity to A, learn a lot, and B, work in an office where there's still time for those people to sit down and go over stuff with you and work as a team. So it really is, it really has been a benefit for me working in a rural county. I'm from a rural county too, so I don't worry too much about being an hour from everything. But we're essentially an hour from Syracuse, Utica, or Binghamton. Take your pick. So it really is nice being able to work in a small office that, you know, you really have the team feel here that, you know, you're all working on the same goal. So.
Well, thank you all. And, you know, we'll open it up for questions that any of you might have. If you want to put it in the chat, that's fine. And I'll just ask a question about, you know, I'm in charge of the Buffalo Legal Aid Society, and we, you know, we have a large office. What they say is absolutely true about the difference between a large office and a small office as to getting into serious cases. You know, if you come to work for us, you're going to be doing misdemeanor work for I don't know, minimum of 5-6 years before you're going to be handling a felony. We have very structured sort of training and supervision and all of that. We have staff meetings, etc. But it's a much more structured environment than these folks are describing a smaller office can be. And of course, we're trying to make a little bit of a sales pitch, but it's more than a sales pitch. It really is a picture of the difference between trying to get into one of these larger offices, which I know many students and new graduates, they want to work for New York Legal Aid, et cetera, and there are lots of benefits to that. But there are a lot of pluses to thinking about working in a more rural county. So anyway, we have a question from Remy Militello. It sounds as if defense has an uphill battle in these rural counties. Is that an accurate interpretation?
I'll say something just real quick. For us here, no. And what I mean by that is, up until this office was created a 1.5 years ago, the state utilized the 18B program, which is basically private attorneys were assigned to represent indigent defendants. And because we didn't have a large pool of attorneys, there were people that could be charged with a serious felony being represented by someone that spends the rest of their day doing trusts and estates work. They had an uphill battle, and the defendants really weren't, in my opinion, weren't being properly represented. Even when I was prosecuting, there were times where I actually felt bad because I knew that the defense attorney was making a mistake or wasn't doing something they should be doing. So now, we've really, especially over the last 6 or 8 months, the judges from the town courts right to the county courts, are are so happy that they opened a public defender's office and that these people are receiving representation from someone who's actually has experience in criminal law, that, you know, files, well, now a lot of the discovery, or all the discovery we get now, but files motions, does hearings, and actually gives these people the opportunity that they are entitled to. So for us, it's actually, this county's a lot better off than it was, you know, a year and a half or 2 years ago. A lot better off.
I would take that, I took the question a little differently. Like, I view it as an uphill battle in that, you know, most of our clients are convicted. You know, it's an uphill battle in the sense that you don't win a case. You know, for us, you know, winning is oftentimes getting the best disposition possible, you know, and, you know, tracking what Jamie said, you know, that goes along with doing a good job and, you know, pointing out the weaknesses in the prosecution's case and doing everything we can for them. But I would say it's always uphill. Like you're pretty much the underdog.
And the advantage, though, the advantage in a small county like ours is you work with the ADAs and the same judges week after week after week. So you figure out what things can you say that they're going to consider more and maybe get a better benefit for your client out of. You really get to learn your judges, you get to learn the ADAs and figure out those things that, you know, what angle can you take where you can get that best disposition from them? You know, what facts or what, you know, home issues could you bring up for these folks that that the judges and the DAs will listen to? And the other part, kind of going off what Jamie said, is it's an uphill battle, but we've been able to work really hard, and by working hard in our office and having that team atmosphere, our judges, even our town judges, are a little less likely to just go with what the district attorney says than maybe they used to be. At least they'll give us a shot to make an argument and, you know, consider it before, you know, just doing what the DA says. So it's an uphill battle in some senses. In other ways, you find it's a different workaround than maybe you'll do in a larger office.
Thank you. That was very interesting. I appreciate all three of those takes.
The next question is from Karas Duru, and it is, good afternoon. Thank you all so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Are there enough resources in your office to fully represent your client and defend them? Whoops, my chat disappeared. To fully represent your client and defend them in the way you want to, as far as resources to fully defend the clients you represent?
I think from our perspective, I always feel like I could use more resources than I have at my disposal. You know, I mean, we do have the resources we need to really do a good job for our clients, but I think there's always ideas and things in our head of how could we be better? You know, I think if you're not trying to consider how could you be better, you know, I think with that question in mind, there's other resources you wish you had. I'd love to have a social worker on staff that could talk to these folks when they're first incarcerated or first coming in to find out, you know, early on, what issues can we start working on to help them?
One thing I would say is that the money from ILS has been a huge help. We used to have to go to the county and get approval to hire an investigator, for instance. And with our serious cases, you know, and we have one where it's definitely a psychiatric issue. We've been able to use state money to hire experts. We don't have an investigator. I would love to have a full-time one, but you know, we have somebody that we use on a case-by-case basis. So it's getting better, but it's difficult, would be my kind of conclusion with that.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm a little different because we're in the infancy stage still. I do have I have 11 staff people in the office already in a year and a half. But I think Zach said it perfectly. You never feel like you have enough, and you don't want to overextend either yourself or everybody else in the office. So, and I never want my county officials to hear me say, oh yeah, we're good to go, because then if you go ask for something, they're like, well, yeah, but 3 months ago you said you were good to go. So you're always looking for more, but we certainly here now have plenty of staff to provide, you know, a very valid and a defense for people that they deserve. So I would say, yeah, we have the resources we need at this point.
Okay,
I'm
this
very
is
curious.
this is an interesting observation, and it would be great if you can comment on it. I think one of the major differences between rural versus city and county courts is that town justices are much more persuaded by general principles of fairness than strict adherence to the law. Would you agree with that?
I don't see that as an advantage to our clients. You know, they, to be honest, I see, you know, the town justices saying, you know, you beat the crap out of this guy. Why should I let you go home? Or, you know, I don't see that.
I certainly don't see that. Even like now with bail reform, we still have judges that don't understand the concept of bail reform and the least restrictive method to get the person back to court. They're like, oh, you know, this is the third time I've seen you in the last 5 years. You're going to jail tonight. You know, like if I had to get woke up at 2 a.m, somebody's going to jail. And you can argue all you want about bail reform and what they're like. Look, if you don't like it, take it up with the county court judge when you file your bail application. And they just don't care.
In our county, you have the judges that don't care. You have a few that really, there are a couple that really have that sense of fairness to some of these people. We have one town court judge who's a retired state trooper that if it's, say, a pettit larceny from Walmart, they got all the items before they left Walmart. He says, well, as far as I'm concerned, that's restitution. So I'm waiving the mandatory surcharge. I'm doing a $0 fine. You owe the court a $50 DNA fee for your pettit larceny conviction on your conditional discharge. And then you have the judges that, you know, it's the first time they've ever seen somebody and they're doing a fine of $500 because, you know, they think they're getting a lighter deal than they should. So it really depends on the judge, but, you know, it's a different feel.
Okay, it's a little after 4, and we have but only one more question, so we'll ask this. This is from Donatello Lazzarati. How does the public defender handle cases involving minors and DWIs? Can you also specify what kind of training you provide? And what is the evaluation process of new hired attorneys? For Ms. Kelly, how do you handle the caseload with 5 staff members? And what challenges you face with non-attorney judges when you handle a case in front of them? Well, that's a lot of questions. But why don't we address the DWI question, and that's you know, the minors charged with DWI.
I'll make mine's going to be short and sweet. We've had probably less than a handful since I became the public defender. When I was a prosecutor, I saw them a lot, especially high school kids around graduation time and whatnot. Knock on wood, and I hope it stays this way. We do not, very few, literally less than 5 since I took over a year and a half, or since we started a year and a half ago.
Does anyone else see that as an issue?
That's not something we see a lot in our county. I mean, I think we've had the most, even with like other offenses, our youth park cases, we've had 3 in the last year. It hasn't been that bad here in Chenango County.
Yeah, we have an awful lot of DWIs and a few adolescent offenders with the raise the age, but.
Okay, I think that the most substantive question here is the training. You know, bigger offices, of course, have training programs. The Defender Association has a trial training program. But how do you train new attorneys in your offices?
We don't have a formal program. We do hands-on. You do a lot of second chair, with an experienced attorney, and we certainly take advantage of every training that NYSDA or the Chief Defenders or ILS or anybody offers. We always, and now that everything is virtual, that's, I guess, one of the pluses from the pandemic is, it's everything. It's just easier to do everything virtual, and we take advantage of all of that.
So at my office, I've been very fortunate. Like I said, I have what I consider to be a large staff for the size of my county. Again, a lot of that I thank ILS for funding. I do, only because of the makeup of my office. I have one gentleman that's literally a waning admission, right up to myself, who has over 20 years of experience, and then everybody in between. My chief assistant's very experienced as well. So we've had the privilege of having new attorneys, the ones that were admitted, having them handle just town courts and basically keeping them out of county court so that they didn't become overwhelmed or have to do things that they kind of weren't qualified for. The big thing is myself and my chief assistant do go out even to some of the town courts with our newer attorneys and just go with them to sit there and answer questions, help them address situations they may not be familiar with. So I did try to set it up that way, and only because my first real job out of law school was here in the county as a prosecutor. At the time, there were 3 ADAs, and after 2 weeks of being in the office, the DA came in and said, "You've been here long enough. Let's take off the training wheels. You're starting a felony trial in 2 weeks." I didn't even know how to pick a jury. I was beside myself. I was like, oh my God. But looking back, I'm like, I don't ever want to do that to someone else the way it was done to me. So I'm a big stickler about not throwing somebody into something that they're not prepared to handle yet. So I don't want to say there's a written policy, but my policy, and I tell everybody this when I interview and I hire, is we're going to slowly get you there. And we have experienced attorneys that can help you along the way.
And with our office, it very much is kind of, we'll give you your files, we'll get you into the courts, we'll go with you to those courts, and once you're ready and say, okay, I think I at least have my feet under me and know how to do this, then we're going to let you go. We don't have any formal training here other than trying to take advantage of the NYSDA trainings or trainings through the state bar. But really, it's really training by experience and being able, like I said, you can walk into any of our offices and ask questions, sit down with one of the attorneys and work through any issues you may come up with. But as far as a formal training program, we don't really have one.
I just want to add one thing, David.
Yep.
One thing at some point, I know COVID's basically made all of us change our lifestyles and we do a lot by Zoom. Like the annual conference this year was by Zoom. I will say one of the biggest benefits I found being a prosecutor was the summer college by NIPTE at Syracuse Law, because it provided training, hands-on training, and training in general from the newest attorneys to I went right up to the last year that I worked at the DA's office after doing this for 20 years. And it was just very beneficial. And it would be great if one of our associations or ILS or somehow we could, in conjunction with each other, put something like that together that I think would be very beneficial to both seasoned attorneys and young attorneys.
There's a training for new attorneys every year. I went 30 years ago, and we've sent every attorney that we have goes to that. It's a week-long sort of intensive training.
Do senior attorneys too, or just the new hires?
Just the new ones.
Okay.
Lisa, do you need us to, there's one more part of Donatella's great questions that I might like to ask, but should we end it?
You're welcome to stay. I would just say if anybody feels like they need to rush away, please feel free and don't feel like you're being rude. But if anyone would like to hear the rest, and if our speakers have time, go ahead.
I get the final question, which, you know, give us I'm just paraphrasing it, but examples of problems with non-attorney judges and how you deal with them.
Well, the problem is, no matter if you're dealing with your county court judge who is an attorney or your town court judge who's a bus driver, you have to treat them like a judge. You can't disrespect them. You can't, you know, call them out in front of everybody. So you have to be tactful. When you know they're making a serious mistake or any mistake and it has to be corrected, you kind of, I'm not a big fan of, like, I've seen attorneys just kind of jump all over the judge. You have to be tactful about it, 'cause you have to remember these people can still, you know, if your client's convicted of an A misdemeanor, they still can, they can put them in jail for a year. So you have to be tactful about it. But I am fortunate enough, having grown up here, having been here my entire legal career, pretty much know every single judge personally. And they know me and they know my character and makeup. So I probably get more benefits than some other defense attorneys do that practice in these courts. It's not uncommon for me in the town courts that I actually go out and handle, where I'll get an offer from the DA's office that I think is like just off the rails crazy. I'll plead the client to you know, the DA will say plead him to a pettit larceny for stealing and I want, you know, 6 months in jail. I'll plead him to the larceny knowing that that particular judge is going to give them a conditional discharge and make them pay a fine and send them on their way. So to me, it's a benefit, but you just really have to be careful how you handle them, because some of them, you put that black robe on them and they kind of get a little bit, their ego grows a little bit and they can take it out on you or your clients.
You asked for an example. I have a funny one. I was getting ready to do a trial in justice court and I did like a Sandoval motion, you know, I didn't want my client's prior convictions any part of the case. And the judge, ruling on my motion, the judge said, oh yes, we're going to use all those. And I happen to know that your client also has convictions in Pennsylvania and we're going to use those too. And so I think in the situations like that, you have to sort of rely on the DA, because they will look to the DA to say, what do I do? And, you know, in a situation that egregious, the DA would say, judge, you know, no. But it's kind of a funny example I thought of.
And in those situations, DAs want to avoid appealable issues anytime they can. So they'll help you fix that situation. But Jamie's right. I mean, the more tactful and respectful you be, like, judge, paperwork is the biggest thing, whether it's commitment orders, securing orders, you know, setting bail. They'll say something on the record, but not put it on the paperwork right. Not sending paperwork in for probation like they're supposed to. It's really about just saying, you know, finding a way to say, judge, we still need to do X, Y, and Z. So this is where it needs to be and we don't have any issue. And the only other example I could give is my jury trials. Trying to do jury trials with lay judges is, it's like the Wild West. You figure it out, but always come prepared with everything from the instructions the judge should be giving to the jurors at the beginning to the instructions you want them to give at the end, because those judges, a lot of those judges won't have any of that or only a fraction of it. So you always come prepared with what you want to have the judge saying to those jurors so that it's there.
All right. Well, thank you, Donatella. These are great questions. And those of you who are on the Zoom still, looking for a job, you know, they're not as frequent as they are from bigger offices, but think about rural practice in New York, because it can be pretty rewarding. And thank you all for participating in this. This has been great.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.